Okay. Help yourselves, by the way. The food is real. Food is real. Sushi's on the way there, Chagav. Whoever's listening. Yeah.
It's one way to get people to come to a share.
What?
Tell them there's food on the way.
Yeah. When it's coming, I don't know. It's on the way. Well, good evening, everybody. So we're starting a new series. We're getting ready for Purim. I remember in 10th grade, we had a teacher, a non-Jewish teacher, but he was very knowledgeable of Jewish practices. He's been teaching in the yeshiva for probably 25 years at the time. And thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you. 25 years at the time, and he was very... we had real shyness with him, in terms of like how to talk to him and learning how to talk to him, because he knew a lot of stuff, and he would discuss it with us. So one time he asked us what Purim is. So we tried to explain it to him, and one boy screamed out, "It's like a Jewish Halloween." I remember feeling at the time, something ain't right. Can't be. Doesn't make sense. Jewish Halloween. Because whatever we do is much more than superficial, right? That's Purim is mitzvahs. Right? When is someone really obligated to do mitzvahs? That's when he becomes a gadol, or she becomes a gedola. What's the definition of gadlus? Being big or maturing, growing older. Is that's being able to see something beyond the surface of beyond what you see on the surface, having a deeper dimension of things, an inner dimension. So then it can't be that something that's a mitzvah, something that's avodas Hashem, should just be as superficial as Halloween. It's got to come from somewhere. And second of all, it got me thinking, then what is it all about, really? First, usually Yom Tov, there's a mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov, right? We eat and we drink, and you're supposed to. Purim, you dress up, the funny costumes. The main part of the day is actual physical eating. You're supposed to eat and drink and get inebriated and drunk if you behave yourself when you do that. That's something that doesn't add up, right? And even the happiest Sukkot, there's no mitzvah of Sukkot is Zman Simchaseinu. It's time of happiness. There's no there's no chayvinish levesume besukkos, that someone has to drink until he doesn't know the difference between nisach hamayim and nisach hayayim, or between hadassim and arovas. He should know the difference. And our being sober is a requirement. You can't do the avodah. You can't do anything. You can't go shake lulav and esrog. You can't go daven if you're not sober. So what's this all about? And in truth, what is it different than Halloween, for example, or any other, right? Getting drunk is usually something that's looked upon in a very derogatory, in a very bad way. I probably mentioned in the past, my grandmother, Zachem Levracha, she grew up in Slabotka. Slabotka was a suburb of Kovna. It's a very famous place because of the yeshiva that was there, but really it's a suburb. Kovna is the big city. There's a bridge, you go over the bridge, and there you have Slabotka, a small little village, neighborhood, whatever you want to call it. So who lived in the suburb? Peasants. Right? And in Kovna happens to be also, there was a book recently put out a bunch of years ago, not so recently actually, about Kovna, someone who grew up there. Peasants. Lithuanian peasants. They were very simple people. They were, right? So it came Sunday. Every Jew knew that on Sunday he better stay inside because the goyim would get drunk from their week's earnings, and when the goyim were drunk, it wasn't a pretty sight. He said that this book that I read, and just to give an idea, it wasn't. They had a dacha. They had where they would go for vacation. There was a doctor next door to them, and they would always bring people. Every wedding ended up with at least a few dead, or injured, stabbed. People were going. They would lose themselves. Right. So where does this come in? To anything, and more than that, we know that Purim is what? Yom Kippurim. When we say Yom Kippur, then Yom Kippur is like Purim, but really Purim is bigger than Yom Kippur, higher than Yom Kippur. How does that make sense? So hopefully over tonight and the next 2 weeks, we're going to try to come to an understanding what the day is all about. Both generally and specifically the mitzvahs that we do, Kriyas HaMegillah, B'Shleach Monos, Matanas Lavyonim, and Sudas Purim, giving for the needy, giving presents for each other, B'Shleach Monos, and listening to the Megillah. But first, generally, what is this day? What are we celebrating? What was planned for us to happen by our enemies? Right, so we know this basic story, right? Achashverosh was very happy that according to his calculations, the 70 years have passed, the 70 years that were prophesied to be the years of exile, and after 70 years we would go back and have the Beis Hamikdash. According to his calculations, that passed, and that's it. He's the man. He's the king. So he made a party, and at that party, he flaunted his wealth, or what he thought was his wealth, and he wore. If you could think about this for a second, he wore the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, clothing which was worn only by the Kohen Gadol when he did the service in the Beis Hamikdash. The Choshen. Imagine we're just learning now the parshas, right? Teruma, Tetzaveh, which talk about the big Kahuna, Kisisa, the Mishkan, right? The vessels in the Mishkan. All these weeks, we're talking about building the Mishkan. How much thought went into them? How special? Who had to build them? It wasn't just simple dishes you buy in the store. I mean, obviously. And here, this guy, that's what he was. He wasn't royal or anything of the sort. He was a stable boy. He comes and he wears, the big day kahuna, and he's using the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash. Vashti herself, I mean, that she had it in her blood. Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, all of those. Right? She was a direct descendant of the destroyers of the Beis Hamikdash. She would taunt the Jewish girls that worked for her, specifically in one of the ways. Look, who's using the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash which were so holy, which had to be? I am. And where are you? You're my slave. So where is your God? Where is he? It's interesting that there's one common denominator, if you look at it, between all of our enemies throughout the ages. It's something that they understood very, very well. Those who want to destroy us understand something very, very clearly. Something that we don't necessarily understand or appreciate about ourselves. And that is they who know who we are, where we come from, who we come from, whose children we are. What we have because we are the nation of Hashem. We are the children of Hashem. Which means that when we realize, right, that we're royal and that we have all those qualities and all these, we're not like everyone else. We're different. We're totally different than everyone else. We're a different makeup. We maybe look the same, right? We have ears, we have noses, but we're a different creation. We're royal. We're higher. And they knew that until they stamped that out of us, they can take away our food, they can take away all our physical comforts, but they're not going to get us. Pari understood that. Haman understood that very well. Hitler understood that. Stalin understood that. And they all understand that. And you have stories from during the war how tzaddikim that were they stood out, and whether they were big rebbes or rabbanim or sheshivas or even so-called your simple Jew who was very not simple, who held strong specifically because they held on to this knowledge, and they didn't let the physical oppression get to them. Right? How do you have, right, someone who's about to be hung for baking what was it for? Baking matzahs. He's about to be hung for baking matzahs, and before he's about to die, what does he want to do? Good evening, welcome. What does he want to do? He's a kohen, and he wants to bless the people one last time because it's Yom Tov. Where do you get that from? The whole psychology was you're a number, you're not a person. That's because we realize ki am kodesh ata. So they all understood that. And that's what Vashti was, one of her big crimes were, how she abused Jewish girls. She made them work on Shabbos. She made them take, if you think about it, they weren't silly. Because what do we just have in last week's parsha? Right? When it was told to build the Mishkan, right? And Betzalel was given the whole order and how to do it and all the different vessels, the kiyar. And all that excitement, remember one thing, remember Shabbos. Don't play around with Shabbos. Because that's the sign between the two of us, between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we're married, that this is it. And nothing can come between them. Once we start playing with that, we're in trouble. That Shabbos is the day that reminds us, right, after going through a whole week and being busy with who knows what, we come and we recharge ourselves on Shabbos, and that reminds us who we are. Who is our Anila Doide V'Doide? Who are we in the Yichud room with? With Hashem. And in an effort to continue that which was done by her grand ancestors, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Achashverosh as well, that was what was done with all that in mind. Because to continue to destroy the knowledge of that we're a special people, that we're a higher people, that we're a separated people, we're royal. And that was the psychology behind it. That still exists. The Yetzer Hara works the same way. First tells you do something small. Right? So I don't know. You won't daven, or you look somewhere you're not supposed to, or you cheat this guy, you're not going to go back to pay the change for someone else, do something small. And then, I did this, I feel guilty. So that's grounds to pray upon. That's what they look out for. Yetzer Hara tries to get us on that. So getting back to Purim, right? So that's, he made the party. And what was the point of that party? The point of the party was to get Klal Yisrael to do Averis of their own accord, of their own will, that there shouldn't be any way to say that we were forced. And that's how that party was designed. It was designed in a very cunning, swindling way. We say in Havdalah, Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. Right? Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, Bein Yisrael Lo'amim, Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheish Simei HaMaseh. Kodesh Baruch Hu, you separate between the holy and the mundane, between Klal Yisrael and the rest of the world. Then, Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheish Simei HaMaseh, between Shabbos and the rest of the days of the week. What's with that order? So I thought about it, and this Matzah Shabbos, by the shir for the ladies, I think we said something very nice. It's very nice to feel all special about Shabbos. It's very nice to feel all special about Jewish identity as a culture. But that's without the foundation of being kodesh l'chol. That's really realizing who we are. Right? Someone asked me, "Is the Magen David a religious symbol?" Huh? You ever thought about that question? Is Magen David a religious symbol? What do you say, Michal?
I don't think it's a religious symbol.
What is it then?
Just a cool thing to wear.
Yeah, sure. Especially if it's gold.
It's on the flag, so
Is it a religious
It's
symbol?
a Jewish symbol.
It's a symbol of
Judaism.
who does it come from? David HaMelech, right? Hence the name Magen David, the shield of David. Why did he pick that as a shield? So someone sent me pictures, and I've discussed this with knowledgeable people before in the past. The Magen David has all of the. I can show you a picture later. Has all of the olive bays. You can put all of the olive bays into that shape. So David HaMelech was going to war with olive bays, not just alphabet, not ABC. Olive bays is Torah. It's the world. It's the way the world is created based on those letters. So that's Yisrael v'Yiraisa and Kuchi B'Richu Chad. You unify together with the Torah, with Hashem. That's the biggest protection. What's being Kodesh L'Chol? It's not the nationalism. It's not the ceremonial aspect of it. It's not the culture, the identity. It's much deeper than just identifying as a Jew. It's realizing who you are in your very essence. Kodesh, Mekudash. We are betrothed. We belong to Hashem, and Hashem is us, is ours. We're one. So what's the l'chol? Why doesn't it say ben kodesh l'tomei? Because chol is mundane. It's not bad. It's nothing wrong, but it's not kodesh. And when we're telling ourselves, going into this week, when we're losing this neshama, the neshama yisera, it's going away from us, from Shabbos. And we're telling it, we're going in, we're saying, we have to first remember, what's going to hold us throughout the work week? Ben kodesh l'chol, first of all. That we're, even if something seems not wrong necessarily, it's not bad, but it's not kodesh, it's not befitting for someone who is a am kodesh. For someone else, it may be totally fine. You know? But it's not for us because of who we are. Then we can appreciate Ben Yisrael La'amim. Then we can appreciate the difference between, not that the other nations are bad necessarily, but they're not us. So we understand why do we do certain things? Why? Because we are us and we're not them. Why do they do certain things that we don't? Because they're them and they're not us. Once we have that understanding of who we are, then we could properly realize the difference between Yom HaShvi and Sheish Yemei HaMaseh, between Shabbos and the days of the week, which is days of the week, nothing wrong with them, but it's not Shabbos, and we can't mix the two. So that's what was the plan over here with the party. To blur the lines between Kodesh and Chol. Come to a party. What do you mean? We'll give you everything. We'll give you kosher. Everything kosher. Everything was based on, you couldn't force anyone to drink anything. But what they offered, the wine, older than you. You're 15, you have 16. You're 20, 25-year-old wine. Expensive stuff. Good stuff. Tempting stuff. And you saw both venues. And of course, what do you mean? Yeah, for the Jews? There could have been so many righteous reasons to go. But Mordechai saw straight through it. And he said no. He says that they're not looking out to come together with us. They're looking out to destroy us and to pass away. And that's what, going back to what Yaakov Avinu davened for. Hatzileni no miyad ochi miyad Esav. Yes, there's darkei shalom. There are ways that we have to coexist, friendly, respecting each other. But Hatzileni no miyad ochi, save me from when it seemed and I should be able to see through when I'm being treated like a brother, but really just another attempt to be Esav. It's another attempt at my destruction. So yeah, so come, enjoy, fully accommodating. I think it's brought down in the Medrash there was no music. Because music would have been so powerful that it could have tilted it either way, and Cheshire didn't want that. But everything, glad kosher, tachas the best hashgachas. And that's where where the lines began to get blurred. And that was the beginning of the destruction. Once we blur the lines. Against whom was all of this? Anoshim, Noshim, V'taf. Who did Haman want? Who did he want to destroy? Everybody. Minar v'adzokin taf anoshim. V'yom echad. Everything in one fell swoop. Everyone out. We don't want anything. We don't want anybody. So let's take another look at this. Let's take a look at Hanukkah. Let's take a look at Purim. What does it say by Hanukkah? What was the objective by Hanukkah? What they want, to make us forget the Torah, forget our learning. He wanted us to assimilate. They weren't after the Jew, they were after Judaism. They were after Torah. Because they realized that as long as we're holding on to that, you can't do anything to us. You can't destroy us. Once the lines are blurred with assimilation, because you can't learn. You're not allowed to, so it's not accessible. Okay, so there we go. There, bye the Jewish nation. That didn't work. By the grace of God, it was also a big ness. It was no less a ness, but it was a different approach for the same problem. Haman came along. What he said? He wasn't interested in anything. You're Jewish. You have Jewish blood running in your veins. Hitler, right? Hitler came from Amalek. Right? Amalek is, the Gemara Megillah says, is Germania, Germany. You have any sort of Jewish blood running through your veins, going back 3-4 generations. That's it. You're done. You're going together with everybody else. Again, we know nothing is for no reason. Nothing. What's the message in each and every one of those? Many times we think we'll do this, we'll be like them a little bit, we'll give in over here, we'll give in over there because of Darkei Shalom, because of being peaceful and coexisting. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't work that way. There are certain things that are not non-negotiable. If you think that you'll get away with it, you won't, because at the end of the day, even those that assimilated, came a Haman, he didn't care who assimilated, who didn't assimilate. If you look at Germany, right, when the reform started, that's people reformed, they believed that was going to save them. They were on the top of the top. The monarchs would come to the Jewish homes. But then it came a time where that didn't work anymore. Because one thing doesn't change. They're after us. They're after us. They're after who we are. Nazis had no issue with having a museum commemorating the Jewish race existing. And they even were collecting things. There are places, I think, till today in Prague, I think some places that have collectibles that were collected in order to one day show the world about the extinct Jewish race. No problem with it being in a museum. They had a problem with a living Jew. The living Jew. Yevonim, Haman, they had different ways of going about it. Right? This way. Because a Jew that's not really, that's far removed, is also not living. His neshama is gasping for air. It's not conscious. And that's what we always say. We're not religious Jews. We're not observant Jews. We're living Jews. We maybe do things religiously, We definitely don't observe from the side. We're the main players. We're living it. And that was the problem. That was the problem that they had. So on a day like Purim, what are we looking to bring back? What are we looking to strengthen? We're looking to bring back and to strengthen specifically what was meant to be put away. Anoshim mitaf ve'adzokin taf ve'noshim. There's nobody that's not important. Every single Jew is a gem. Every single Jew is full of potential. Every single Jew is a diamond. Every single Jew is a beacon of light. It just has to be fanned. And if you think about it, what's the, as we spoke, what's the mitzvah saying of Purim, which we'll talk about more in depth in the coming weeks? Physical. Sudas, good food, eat, drink. Why? Because many of you could think maybe to be a holy Jew, you have to be far removed. No, you don't have to be far removed from anything. As we said, the story with Graf Potocki when he came to the Yavitz, and he was looking into Judaism. He says, just tell me when you guys go up to heaven. He says, we don't go up to heaven. We bring the heavens down over here. We take a piece of fish and we make it the holiest thing in the world. Because we do it with Hashem together. We have that unique relationship of Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Summit. Of constantly being in the presence of royalty and of greatness. When we have that clear, we become indefeatable. I quoted, I think I said this Motzei Shabbos, Rabbi Moshe Weinberger. He said a very, very powerful thing. He said his father didn't necessarily give him, well, I'll call it, for lack of a better word, academically, what he gave his child. Yeah, maybe he finished Masechtas with his child. His father didn't necessarily finish Masechtas with him. But he gave him something invaluable that ensured the successful passage of the Yiddishkeit to the next generation. And he calls it the Oy. The Oy, the feeling, which takes something from being mechanical into being something living. And something living lives. Our body is not living. Our body is a piece of meat and bones. Our neshama is living, and that stays around forever. Body goes away after its job is done in this world. But who we are, our neshama, that doesn't go away nowhere. And if we want to ensure Jewish survival, right? What do we say? Never again. How? By realizing who we are. That's, we're going to approach all the mitzvahs hayom that we have in Purim, Kriyas Megillah, the Suda, Mishloach Manos, Matanas Leganim, with this lens. I hope we'll have a whole new appreciation, and I hope that our Purim will be on a level that it never has been before. And we'll be able to experience it in such a sweet way that we'll reach a place of such closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and of such clarity that'll bring us closer to the ultimate clarity of Bias Goel Tzedek. I want to just end off with one story, very amusing and very but brings out the point.
So that's why we get drunk now, to show that you can have Sudas HaChasperish in a good environment?
If you're able to behave yourself in a way that's befitting, right? That your person is not over any Averis when he's in that state.
No matter, why is that the mitzvah?
What? Because I remember that we're able to behave ourselves. That's what I think.
I think it's, can I get an Egypt like?
This was 3 times in a row, maybe an emergency. I apologize, I don't do this usually. Hello? Oh, sure, yeah, someone's gonna come out. Thank you. somebody go down. They're delivering something. Yeah. Because the whole idea was Shananu Masuda Rasha. The getting drunk is more not so much the Suda. I think that's the Suda itself. The getting drunk part is we're putting ourselves in, we're letting go. We're letting go and letting God. You're yoyed to the mitzvah even if you don't get drunk. So there's no... A person could go to... No, then you can go to sleep, and the idea is to put yourself in a situation...
So that makes sense why you can go to sleep, because you're also letting go.
Where you're not in control. Right. There's no... you're putting yourself in a place where you're not in control. You're not in control, and you realize that everything was with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which in a certain way is the biggest comfort that one can ever have. Right? You're faced back and forth with different challenges, and how am I getting through these challenges? I'm only doing them because... who's giving them to me? Right? Someone... Yitzchak Fanger from Eretz Yisrael, he gave a good mashal with a rose. What was it? I don't remember exactly what he said, but a rose is pricky. It has pricks. Right? A rose is very beautiful on top, but there's pricks, and when you get up, it's very prickly. The stem is very prickly. Right? You hurt yourself. So I'm not sure how he tied the two, and I don't remember. I have to listen to it again. But every challenge is not necessarily a push away. It's a bring in. You grow sometimes from, who was it, a turtle, or it was a turtle or a lobster, something like that. So one of these. They go in, they get banged, and they grow from that. I don't remember exactly the muscle, but that every challenge is given who sent us the challenge and what's it there for. It's there to bring us up, to raise us higher. It's a stepping stone. It's not as opposed to being a sledgehammer. So that's, I think, the drinking is more putting yourself in that state of being mevatel yourself in that way, of letting go and showing I'm not in control of who's in charge. But the Sudas, how we have a Suda. Right? Even, we have a Suda with a lot of drinks and a lot of alcohols and singing and dancing. How do we prava a Suda? Do we prava like them, who it ends up in brawls and fistfights and because, right? Or do we keep ourselves in a noble way? True colors come out when someone drinks. What are our true colors? That's more the drinking and the Suda. But again, we'll take it further. Just to end off with a very amusing story, which goes back just to explain, who we are, and not bending and not giving. Rabbi Binsky was a Talmud in Navardik. Navardik was very famous for going to communist rallies and stopping them in the middle and saying whatever they think. Right? To spread that emunah bitachon, people shouldn't get swept away. And there are stories of Navardik Talmidim, during the war, the Navardik Rosh Yeshiva, they wouldn't budge. They weren't fazed by anything. They worked on themselves. They weren't fazed by anything. And they would have different ways of there's a famous thing that they would go into pharmacies asking for nails. Right? That was not to be afraid to look silly in front of someone else. That was different exercises to work. They really worked themselves out as people. They say, Musa say that there were two different approaches, right? In Musa, right? Either that I'm godless, I'm very realizing how great I am, and therefore holding myself up to a standard, or realizing how really for ourselves we're nothing, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us everything. Either way, it ends up at the same destination, because we're very great. Who gives us that greatness? Hashem. Really, for myself, I'm nothing. What do I have everything from Hashem? So they say someone came to Navardik, and then Musa said that they were all sitting and saying, "Oh, ich bin agarnished, I'm nothing." This new kid comes in and he sees everyone saying that they're nothing, so he sits down, also starts going shocking, saying, I'm nothing. So someone comes over to him, he's in yeshiva already for 5 years, and he says, a little bit of respect, you just got here already, you're nothing. You understand? Wait, give it a while until you get to that level. So anyway, what would they do? Yankel Galinsky learned in Navardik. There were a lot of the Navardik Talmidim ended up in Siberia during the war. he was a young bocher, and every month they would work on a different midah. Right? So Cheshvan usually is the month right after Sukkot, right? And usually that's when the new semester starts, the new Zman. And they would work on greeting people nicely. Because generally new students would come into the yeshiva, so that would, the whole year obviously you do that, but that was a month where they focused on that with all their might. Adar, the month of Adar is specifically when they worked on this not non-negotiable part of them. No negotiation about certain things. And that's when they would go around to the pharmacies and ask for nails and all sorts of things like that. That was usually all happened in the month of Adar. So, but that wasn't what they were told to do. That was ideas that Bochram had. Everyone was supposed to come up with his own way to exercise this value that they learned. So, Rabbi Yankel Galinsky, he heard somewhere that in the cemetery at night, not in the cemetery, right outside the cemetery where they would wash the bodies, that different souls and spirits would come and hang out over there at night. He was a young kid. He said, we have to show that we're not scared. Where does it come from? Why specifically Chodesh Adar? Because that was Mordechai's midah. Right? Mordechai loy kom v'loy zos. Says when Haman came, and not only he just didn't bow down, you couldn't tell him that he wasn't at all uncomfortable. He was Mordechai through and through. He wasn't fazed whatsoever by Haman. They took that midah, and that's what we're learning here now. So he said, I'm not fazed, I'm not afraid of these spirits or anything like that. I'm going to go, and I'm going to toivel in the mikveh. At night. I'm going to go. Whether there was a mikveh there or not is up for this dispute, because not necessarily they had it back then. It's a separate discussion about the history of the funeral business in the Jewish communities all through the ages. But there was water. The pails of water that were used. I'm going to go wash myself there, he said. And he was thinking he didn't want to tell anybody about this. He says, because if I'm gonna back out, they'll say, oh, you're a wuss, right? You're a chicken. You're not doing anything. If I'm gonna go, they're gonna think I'm crazy. So either way, let me keep it to myself. The day he's gonna do this, and keep in mind this is Belarus in the month of February, March. Okay, it's usually not too. We have a representative. It's cold or it's hot over there that time of year? Very, very hot. Yeah, sure. So the mikveh in the Chevra Kedisha stable was not heated. It's pitch black. It's a shtetl, right? Navartik. It was. I think till today they'll have horses running around over there free. When we were there in Belarus, we were driving on the street, and there was between Radin and Mir, we had like a cow on one side of the car, and we were driving. They were going out for breakfast, and he was going, and it was pitch black, and he's thinking, should I go? And he's like, I can't back out because I'm going to be a chicken. I can't tell him. He said, that's it. It was freezing cold outside. It was pitch black. And he heard the door creaking. He was getting close, and the door creaking. It was windy, and he heard, I guess, the water splashing around. They said, "Oh, they're already busy. The spirits are there already, and that's it." So he said, "How am I going to do this?" He said, "That's it. In and out, 1 second, just to say I did it, and I'm done." So he goes in. It's pitch black. There's no light. There's nothing. He quickly takes off his clothes, jumps into the water, freezing, icy water. It's been sitting. Goes in, and he feels, he steps on the head. He said, He said, and this, all of a sudden, in the dark, this head, white, like this, tablecloth, comes up at him. He flew out of there. He doesn't remember how he went back to yeshiva. He got dressed, I'm sure, also on the way out. But he was very quick. He does nothing. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't daven. He comes in the morning to eat breakfast, and he sees a friend of his doesn't look good. He comes over with his Moshe, what's wrong with you? He says, you're not going to believe what happened last night. He says, I wanted to work on this midah, not to be afraid of anything. So I decided I'll go toivel in the mikveh with the spirits together. He says, you're not going to believe it. I'm under the water, and one deceased guy comes and on top of my head. He said, you have no idea what it feels like. He said, you better believe I don't. And that was how he learned his lesson. He said, what did he learn from that? He says, many times we have an idea and we think, only me. Only I have such an idea. No one else has such an idea. Oh, he found out the hard way. It's not. It was a lesson for him in humility. It's not just me. There are other people around here besides me. But that's how they worked in the Smidah, and it served them very, very in very good stead throughout communism, throughout the war, throughout many different challenging times. They stood steadfast. You couldn't break an Avardika. You couldn't break them. Not for nothing. They were strong. They were, no pun intended, they were tough as nails. You know, they didn't just ask for nails in the front. They were real. They were tough. And they said they were. There was one time, there was, I think World War I maybe, that the bombs were flying, and it was in the middle of davening. I think Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, one of those. And the Alta Venavata, they said he didn't move. They worked. It's a tremendous thing if you think about it. They worked on themselves to such a point where they were there. They did what had to be done, no matter what, no matter who, no matter anywhere. I think maybe that's another thing of Purim. We're putting ourselves specifically, dealing with people, eating, drinking, but in a certain way we're letting go and letting God, but in a certain way, and on the same token, we're staying in control of ourselves to be the people that we need to be in any situation that may come our way. Whether it's hectic, whether it's not hectic, and that's a power, that's a koyach that we have in ourselves that we have to work out. So I wish you all a wonderful evening. Please enjoy the refreshments. The sushi just came, fresh sushi, with some beer, and with some 21. Everyone here is 21 years and older. Just everyone should know. But and so next week we're gonna go more in depth into psukim in the actual psukim in the Megillah, and the mitzvahs of the day with this lens that we started off with today. Thank you all very much. Freilich and Purim.